My wife and I got married and enjoyed a happy life together for several years. Recently, however, I noticed a deterioration in our relationship. We were both busy with work. She would come home, have dinner, and go straight to bed without saying a word to me. This went on for a few months until I decided to investigate. I asked for help from a friend who used to work in a private detective agency, and he revealed the truth to me. It turned out that my wife had been seeing another man for a long time, which explained the tension in our relationship. I was furious when my wife came home from work and couldn't resist confronting her. The mother-in-law listened to everything but did not interfere in our arguments. Eventually, my wife called her sister, who lived in a spacious two-story house with her husband and no children yet. She came and took my wife to her place, leaving me alone with my mother-in-law. She is a wise woman who immediately began to comfort me by telling me stories of her difficult life, including marriages and divorces. One husband drank heavily, and the other often came home smelling of women's perfume. Now, at age 45, she found herself alone. I finally understood her situation and reassured her by saying, "It's not your fault," after which I headed for the kitchen. I took a bottle of whiskey out of the refrigerator and set it on the table. I was followed by my mother-in-law, who decided to make herself a cup of coffee. Noticing the bottle, she offered to make sandwiches. I nodded and sat down at the table. She handed me a glass, and I asked if she wanted to keep me company. She replied that with a son-in-law like me, she would love to join in. She placed a second glass on the table, and I poured her a drink while she served the sandwiches. We sat together, enjoying our drinks and having various conversations. The whiskey didn't run out right away, and I switched to beer. My mother-in-law declined and left the kitchen to take a bath. I leisurely finished my bottle of beer. Soon, my mother-in-law returned to the kitchen, now in her bathrobe and smelling of fragrant shower gel. She began clearing the table and moving around the kitchen. I watched her, finding pleasure in it. Unable to contain myself, I walked over to her while she was doing the dishes. I put my arm around her waist, and she turned her head and said, "You have a temper, son-in-law." I didn't let her say anything more, and we continued our warm encounter. Overwhelmed by desire, I fleetingly thought it was wrong, but quickly pushed the thought away. My mother-in-law was an attractive woman, and the whiskey loosened my inhibitions. We slowly made our way to the couch. What followed was intense and grown-uply intriguing, unlike anything I'd experienced before. Afterward, we lay there, completely exhausted and breathing heavily, like after a jog in the park. The sound of a key in the front door made us turn around abruptly. My cheating wife was standing there with a suitcase in her hands, shock written all over her face. "I came to pick up some things, but I see you've already moved in and are having fun," she hissed. Before I could answer anything, she turned on her heel and slammed the door behind her. I looked at my mother-in-law, and we were both stunned. "This shouldn't have happened," I said bluntly. She nodded, but there was a sly smile in her eyes, which scared me. We dressed quickly and avoided each other for the rest of the night. But I was still glad that my ex-wife had seen it all, and I was relieved to have revenge for her betrayal. In time, I wanted to continue to take revenge on her, but I pulled myself together and calmed down. She was not worth it. I just divorced that no good woman. By that time, she had moved on with a new lover. As for me, I went on casual dates, but had a hard time making real acquaintances. Eventually, I met a new person, and now we are engaged. This time around, I'm trying to treasure what I have. As for my mother-in-law, we remain good friends, but we keep our distance. The ghost of that mistake is always looming before my eyes. Although deep down, if I don't deceive myself, I liked everything that happened with my mother-in-law.